All right, so on to the next area, which is if you kind of think about the big things that are next for Google over the course of the next 5 years, what would be some of the things that people would not be thinking about today?
Well, I can't tell you anything that we're doing that's not public, but about 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, we moved to create this structure which is called Alphabet, which is a sort of holding company within which Google is by far the biggest sort of operating unit. But the reason we did that was we had a whole bunch of experiments and research-driven projects that were going on, and it was becoming increasingly clear that we needed to sort of separate those out if they were going to move fast. And Larry and Sergey spend all their time now on sort of Alphabet rather than Google. And you know, some of those are Waymo, which is the self-driving car operation. And you know, when we started doing that, I just thought this was a hobby. There was a competition in the US, which was initially to build a car that could drive itself in a straight line through the desert for a mile. And you know, that was difficult in those days. And then it became like round a course. And now we've driven hundreds of thousands of miles on regular streets with a self-driving car. And it's proven the thesis that computers can drive more safely than humans. And that actually is becoming fairly well accepted now. But at the time we started it, people thought it was crazy. But a car that's got sensors in 360, that's constantly scanning and is able to make real-time decisions based on that information, is likely to be able to avoid problems better than a human can. So we're in a position now where the technology works. I think by pioneering this stuff, what's happened is a bunch of other players have gone, if this is going to work, we should do our own as well. So the car industry and Tesla and Apple and others have been working on similar things. And in a world where 1 million people die through road accidents a year, it's a huge case to make this stuff safer. Also, self-driving cars will be able to drive more closely to each other and therefore reduce the need for highway capacity, also improve environmental damage and so on. So I think it's really exciting. The challenge now is not the technical challenge. The challenge is the regulatory challenge of how do you introduce this technology into the wild. We saw, I think, was it last week, 2 weeks ago, Tesla had an incident where somebody was killed. The technology needs to be really safe. And then we need to decide as a society what kind of liability sits with whom. So that's an example. Another example would be we have a company under Alphabet called Verily. It's our life sciences company. And they've been doing really interesting stuff. Another key trend that I could have added to my list of 3, but 3's enough, is the sort of miniaturization of sensors and battery technology. So you may have read about the contact lens that can measure your glucose levels. So the guys at Verily identified this. So diabetes is on the increase. Millions of people are going to be affected by diabetes. If you're diabetic, there's an awful lot of pricking yourself and checking your glucose levels and so on, which is pretty unpleasant actually to do. And a contact lens that has a minute sensor in it that can measure the glucose level in your tears and via an app on your smartphone give you an accurate projection of where you are so that you can adjust your consumption in real time is transformational for people. And we've developed the technology to do that. And actually, what we've done there is, in partnership with Novartis, we're now kind of developing the go-to-market because we're not a company that understands how to do the regulatory side of things. But I think you'll see more and more of those sorts of innovations. So there's a couple of examples of things we're excited about.